Hello, everyone. I'm Wendell Jones, and welcome to this special program as we discuss Hurricane Irma that is traveling through the Bahamas. And we believe that Bahamians are prepared for this hurricane that is bashing the Caribbean. And we are told that there were 2 fatalities in St. Martin, and this is a monster of a hurricane that is moving through the Caribbean and into the Bahamas. Our guest on our program today is Mr. Jeffrey Simmons, who is the Senior Deputy Director at the Department of Meteorology. And we are pleased to have the cooperation of the Met Department, the seasoned professionals in that department who have been informing our country over the many years. And I am told that they're some of the best in the region. And so, Mr. Simmons, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mr. Jones. Good evening.
Godfrey Innes, nice to see you, as usual.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Simmons, is one of those young professionals in the Met Office who's highly trained. I think he came under the tutelage of Mr. Arthur Roll.
Yeah.
And Mr. Roll has produced some outstanding professionals in the Met Department.
Yes. Mr. Simmons, I know that the Met Office is up to speed on the hurricane, but at the last time I checked, we had the coordinates that warned the people in the southeast Bahamas. We have a number of Bahamians who have been evacuated out of Auckland's, Inagua, Crooked Island, and many other parts. And I'm told that they are here in the capital. The reason for the evacuation?
The projections have been for Irma for the past few days. We saw the track coming toward, first was heading off to the north, and then we saw it dip slightly to the west. And it was kind of maintaining that track for a while, which meant that those islands would, particularly the island of Inagua, would experience a direct hit from Irma. And we expect that to happen sometime tomorrow night and into Friday morning. And Irma is, as we know, is on record now as one of the strongest, if not the strongest hurricane in the Atlantic Basin, and more that is known about. And this is a Category 5, and packing winds and winds sustained is close to around 200 miles per hour.
Yeah, 200 miles?
Yeah, it was up to 185, and so gusts would have been in excess of 200 miles per hour. And this is a serious catastrophic storm. And there's a chance that this survive that it would really do a lot of damage. So as the government would have thought it best to move the people out of harm's way and try to get those people, especially in those isolated areas, out of the islands, those islands. We have seen what Joaquin, which was a 4 at the time it hit Crooked Island. We have seen the damage that was done in Crooked Island, and especially when you look at Landville Point area and all of that. And not only the winds, but then you also, in really our family, as most people live on or near the coast, right? And, I had the privilege to go into the Landville Point and seeing actually a house just across the road from the sea with boulders in the living room. I mean, boulders that it takes several men to try to move. And I'm talking about several strong, healthy men try to move those boulders. And they found themselves in these people's living room and all through their kitchen and everywhere else and all of that. And so it is really a catastrophic storm. So it's best to try to move the people, out of harm's way.
Some of these storms, they pack a lot of wind, but then we've had some storms with not that much rain. Apparently, this one has wind and rain.
Has wind and rain, yes. Forecast rain, especially for what they put out for the Bahamas, could be up to 12 inches, in some parts. So, and in most cases, something, especially with a storm at this size, you look at most of the rain to be on the outer fringe of the storm, which is the area we expect to really affect us here in New Providence and parts of the Northwest and Central Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mr. Simmons,
yes,
this would be the third time that the southeastern Bahamas has really been impacted by these hurricanes. And for example, Long Island last year was almost cut in half.
Yeah, 2015.
Yeah, year before last.
Year before last, right? Last year, places like Lovely Bay and Acklands and Chester's were cut off, and the government had to go in and rebuild, the bridge connecting.
Mm-hmm.
The damage to the infrastructure and people living in areas that are vulnerable to tidal surges and these kinds of extreme situations. What is your advice to the government, the Met Office?
Generally on the islands, a lot of people, like I said earlier, tend to live near the coast. And living on the coast is, I guess, is something traditional. It was an easy form. Back then, boating was the form of transportation, and people lived near the sea. Life was easier there. Mm-hmm. But now, you really have to start looking at especially when you talk about government infrastructure like roads and all of that. You really have to start considering moving further inland. Okay. I could talk about Cat Island. I grew up I spent most of my childhood days in a settlement in Cat Island called T-Bay.
Yeah.
And it was Hurricane France, right? And T-Bay basically is almost in the center of Cat Island. Cat Island have a road, most of the road being Cat Island, from all the way from Orange Creek in the north, all the way down, almost going into Port Out, because you have to turn to go to the Devil's Point. Yeah. It's coastal road, and it's just one road, and everyone live on that road. And the road, it was France in T-Bay, that actually damaged the road in such a way that people couldn't get past. So the island was basically cut in half. Or you could walk through the bush, walk around, and go, but you couldn't drive. You couldn't drive from one end to the island the way you would normally do. And so the roads, and strange enough, the road has been beautifully reconstructed, same place again. Well, and so so we have to look at moving these things further inland. I went into Acklands after what came in 2015. And, the guys are living right there near the sea, and his house, the sea just came and washed through his house, ran him out of he and his family out of his house. And then, you stand and you look across the road, and it's a nice hill.
Yeah.
Bush. So there's, and you can look at putting and moving your infrastructure further inland. Now is the time for us to start seriously considering those kind of things. We have to move away. That was the way it was built in the 17th and 18th century. And now we need to start looking at modernizing things a bit.
We've always had coastal roads, Mr. Simmons. In most of the islands of the Bahamas,
even here in New Providence, and we saw what happened. And we saw what happened with the caves right here.
Yes,
we saw what happened with the caves after Floyd in 1999. Okay, that road was I still have pictures of it. The road right across from the caves. Yes. That road was totally destroyed, right? But it was rebuilt.
Yes.
Right, and well, maybe here in New Providence, where everyone, because the whole island of New Providence is populated there, just about everywhere, and to have a waterfront property is it. I never realized that until I was a grown boy. As a little boy, I thought that So what? You live on the waterfront, so what?
Yes.
That's the only life I knew.
That's the only life you knew in Cat Island.
That's the only life I knew.
And so
No big deal.
it's no big deal. And a whole lot of people are still seeking to be on the waterfront.
On the waterfront, right. So, as you go out, you want to look at moving infrastructure, especially on the family islands, as we develop the family islands more. You want to look at developing it more in a more sustainable manner.
Yeah, but before we lose our focus here, we need to know, for instance, how Irma is going to impact not only the southeast islands of the Bahamas and the northwestern Bahamas. Well, let me put it another way. We seem to, this hurricane is going to impact most of the islands of the Bahamas.
That's correct. If not
It is
all.
that big.
It is that big. It's that big. It's going to impact us as some way or the other. Some of us will only get tropical storm force. We only get some tropical storm force winds and some rain. And some, like the islands in the southeast, we expect to get a direct hit, which means they would experience some hurricane storm force winds, and could be up to Category 3, Category 4 hurricane force winds they can experience.
Okay. Currently, it's Category 5.
Yes, sir.
And you expect that once it passes Cuba, that it would weaken. Is that the position?
We can yet probably it would still be a major. The projection for that for Irma is to remain a major hurricane, even as it goes as it turns north near Florida coast.
Mm-hmm.
We still expect it to maintain its status as a major hurricane, which is at least a Category 3.
Okay, all right.
When you look at the model that I've seen, it seems as if it is traveling between Cuba and Andros. Is that correct?
Yes.
It may veer either. If it goes east, it'll be the east coast of Florida. If it goes west, it'll go into the west coast and the Gulf of Mexico.
That's right. Well, if it continue going west, but it's supposed to be expected to take a northerly turn.
Yeah.
When it's midway along the northern coast of Cuba.
Yeah.
And that would take it up like the Florida Strait, and for that reason, we are a bit concerned about islands like Bimini
and Grand Bahama.
And Grand Bahama.
But tell me, in the Sierra Madre Mountains in Cuba, what role are they playing? Because traditionally, we always hope that it goes over Cuba.
Right, we like
and the
that.
mountains would break them up. What role is the mountain playing?
Everything is showing that those mountains going to play very little to no role at all.
No role at all.
Because what this hurricane is doing is more or less maintaining its center off the coast in the open waters.
Yeah.
And the water at this time of the year is very warm. Okay, and this storm of everything going for it, right? This storm is a privileged storm.
Is it a perfect storm?
A privileged storm.
It's a privileged
What do you
storm.
mean by a privileged storm?
It has a good source of energy, which is the warm water. It have a good outflow in the upper atmosphere. We also look at things to really hamper the growth of the storm. The wind shear, which winds at the upper levels to keep taking the top up, not allowing it to grow. The wind shear in the environment that this storm is in and moving into, there's very little or no shearing at all. Mm-hmm. So therefore, the storm is given that opportunity to grow unfettered.
And you don't have a high pressure system.
We have a high pressure system above it, which it needs as an outflow, and that has been very cooperative with the storm all along and everything. And it have a very good source of energy. Mm-hmm. The warm waters are there, and the temperatures, the sea surface temperatures are above normal.
And there's no system coming, say, from North America that would cause any disruption to the storm.
Not in its growth. It may be in its path and its movement, but not in its growth. Mm. So that's why this storm has been able to grow. From the beginning, you notice that this storm, even since it was in the mid-Atlantic, it was actually a major hurricane, a Category 3, Category 4, since it was in the mid-Atlantic.
Mr. Simmons.
which is something you hardly see again.
Yeah. Mr. Simmons, there's some people, and some people sitting around the table who believe that we've always had these Category 4 and 5 hurricanes. And despite the thinking about global warming, all right, that this is just a natural occurrence. What role has global warming played in this situation, in this scenario?
Well, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they came, and when it comes to hurricane, you look at, and it is agreed that the warming has some effect on the intensity of hurricanes, not so much the frequency, but more or less the intensity. We have seen a lot of things over the past few years when it comes to hurricane. I think one of the strongest, the strongest storm that I ever recorded in this region or anywhere else was Hurricane Patricia. I think Patricia was in around 2015 or thereabout. That was in the Pacific Ocean. Okay, it made landfall on the Baja Coast, somewhere in that area of California, on the west coast of the United States. And that had been a storm that we have never seen before, with that kind of intensity. The wind speed in that was well in excess of 200 miles per hour.
Yeah. And while we've had powerful storms in the past, we have not seen any like Irma. The point is that the 26 hurricane was a huge one. 29 was huge. There was the storm in 1890 something that claimed hundreds of lives. You know what I'm talking about. And so when Godfrey talks about global warming and talks about people around the table, he wants to talk about the strength of those storms way back then.
But let me throw another fact at you. I don't know if it has ever happened, but I would have to go back and check it out. But we have our islands here 3 years, and this is now our third major hurricane in 3 years. I don't think we've ever seen that.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that we have not had very powerful hurricanes decades ago.
No,
and the point is that 29 was bad. Most of the churches in New Providence lost their roofs in 1929. St. Agnes was destroyed. Ebenezer was destroyed. Trinity was destroyed. And all the churches in the city lost their roofs. Zion's roof came off. So these were powerful hurricanes back in the 20s.
But I don't know if the building code back then was as stringent as they are now.
Yeah, but these were huge churches.
I went through Auckland's, not Auckland's, Crooked Island, and San Salvador. I seen some roofs off. There was, one thing I did was I went in some churches and some other buildings and everything. But the strange thing that I noticed with every roof I saw came off in what came in those islands that I visited, there were no hurricane clips in them.
Okay.
There were no clips in those roofs.
Okay. Yeah. Our building code has been strengthened over the years, no doubt.
Right.
But when people talk about the 29 hurricane, and Blind Blake wrote the song "Run, Come See Jerusalem," and the number of souls that were left on the ocean, the number of people who were shipwrecked. You're talking about difficult hurricanes.
Yeah,
I read the book.
But that was, in those days, there were things like lack of communication.
Yeah.
I'm saying, these people, come on, no one is going to build it. Going fishing on the Niagara right now.
Fine.
But because the news is out there.
Yeah.
In 1929, they didn't have that news.
Fine. People were on the ocean in 1929. But if you read the book of Sir Clifford Darling of the 1926 hurricane, you're talking about water that reached to people's necks in the southeastern islands.
Oh yes, that happens. That happens today even.
Right. And so we appreciate global warming, climate change, but the point is that we have also had some very, very dangerous hurricanes in this region, even before we were talking about global warming.
That's true. That is true.
That's the point. That's the point I make to my good friend Mr. Enos all the time. He has a little difficulty appreciating that.
No, I appreciate it.
But I mean, okay, I'm a scientist who believe in. I'm one of those who do believe in global warming because I see the facts.
Yes.
Okay, and we have read. We here in NASA. We actually we have a diary, a weather diary from the early 1900s. We have rainfall data going back into the 1890s. Yeah, as a part of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, each country have to send a national report, and so as the climate and all of that. And for the first 2 ones, I know I worked along with the BEST Commission in terms of putting together the information on climate. And there is evidence that we look at all of our temperatures over the years, and there's evidence that the temperatures are increasing. We have not significantly, but then a 1 degree temperature increase, it really is significant when you look at it from a global perspective. Mm-hmm. And we have seen the evidence here that the temperature is increasing. We have seen evidence here that the rainfall, particularly in the southern Bahamas, is decreasing over the years. Mm-hmm. So and this is not only here, that's only here in the Bahamas. But then as you go globally, and we all get together globally and we compare our information and put everything together, and the facts are there. Okay, I mean, as scientists, we just sometimes like to present the facts, mm-hmm. and people make the judgment call on it from there.
Southeastern islands are going to be battered by Irma, no doubt.
Yes, sir.
And as it comes down the chain, is it going to dissipate any? There are some people who believe that given the coordinates, that New Providence will not have a 4 or 5, that it would weaken when it comes into the Northwest Bahamas. Is that so?
No, not quite. Let's qualify that. So while on its present track, here in New Providence, we will not experience anything like that. We'll experience on its present course, and we've been running just model just before I left, showing the wind speed as it comes in, as it approaches. Well, it will be passing to the south of us, closer to Cuba. We'll be experiencing tropical storm force winds and all of that. That don't mean the storm isn't any stronger. It just means we're not that close to the center. We don't expect the center to come that close to us. But that is on the forecast track that we have now, and we're looking at things that are starting to happen around here sometime on Friday evening. We expect the wind conditions start to pick up. So we'll see some things going on Friday night, Saturday morning here. That's provided the storm remain on its track.
Yes.
Now that track, the more that track shift to the east or closer to us, the stronger the wind speed feel. But like I said, the storm, I think the forecast on it, from what I've seen, the forecast on it is that it would weaken to 4-3. But it would still be a major, because from a category 3, that's a major hurricane.
Yeah.
So it would still be a major hurricane.
It will be a major hurricane, but somewhat away from
us.
From New Providence.
From New Providence.
And so South Andros then
could feel even
more of
right.
the brunt of the hurricane.
Exactly, right.
And then it moves into further into the northwest, into the area of Bimini and Grand Bahama.
Right, we're looking at that turn to see how much Bimini and Grand Bahama will be affected by that turn toward the north. Even though the models are pushing it more toward the east coast of Florida, that isn't very good for Bimini and Grand Bahama.
Now, we are told that because of the Gulf Stream, that Grand Bahama, the waters around Grand Bahama is warmer than, say, it's around New Providence?
That's a possibility. Could be. It is. On that area in the straits in the Gulf Stream, because that's the Gulf Stream heading up in that area. So, you're looking at again more so, but hopefully by the time as they pick up the energy, it would be past West End and moving on to Florida coast there, South Carolina, or someplace in that area.
Okay.
Mr. Simmons, I am very concerned about the southeastern Bahamas. Mm-hmm. Developmentally, the southeastern Bahamas is less developed than the northern Bahamas. There's been a population drift from those islands to the urban centers, right? Mm-hmm. And now it's highly vulnerable to climatic conditions, which, as you know, they are all narrow islands with limited aquifers, water resources, right? It's getting, the rainfall is getting less, all right? And those islands are extremely are vulnerable in terms of what they've experienced these last years. And I think they are a major, as we all know, is a major conduit for illegal immigrants, drug smuggling. They are also invasive species.
Right.
Right. So those islands are extremely vulnerable in terms of our overall development of our country.
Right.
What you professionals in the Met Office are recommending vis-a-vis climate resilience measures or mitigation ideas? What's happening?
Well, the islands are vulnerable just as any other island in the Bahamas when it comes if it's going to be exposed to climatic conditions. But like you said, and like I said earlier, we noticed that there's a decrease in rainfall, so the aquifers will not be as healthy. But there's always RO. Yeah. And but the basic thing really to keep the islands going, I guess, really is just the island need an economy, right? And without an economy, I mean, no matter what
you just came back from Iguana,
right? I'm ready to go back. Not now.
So what's happened to Iguana? When they got about 200 people there, right?
About, I think the commissioner listening to some of his money said he had about 163 there at the time on the island.
That's a big island.
It's a very big island. I don't know if I learned a lot when I was there, and I went out and these guys. I never knew there was a settlement I know those settlements.
Yes, the islands in the southeast Bahamas are quite large. Mayaguana, Inagua, Auckland.
Right, but as in Mayaguana, there's this place called Horse Pond. Mm-hmm. There's a settlement there.
Okay.
Yeah. How many people?
No one lives there.
No one lives there. And there are settlements in most of the islands where no one would be living. Inagua, Mr. Simmons, escaped the huge hurricanes in the last few decades. Generally speaking, they don't have these very large hurricanes. I know that there was one in recent times that impacted Inagua, but generally speaking, they escape them, don't they? As a result of the proximity to Cuba.
Yeah, they do, because most of them, it's so close, I guess, and most of them go into the Caribbean Sea, and then they go past. They head continue west and out into the Gulf, or like Matthew did, it turned and came up into the northwest Bahamas, instead of going that way.
We have not experienced a hurricane. I think Matthew was 140 in terms of wind speed, 140 miles per hour.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah. I've not heard of 185 miles an hour, and you were saying that gale force winds extend out to about 200 miles. If that hurricane, if it were to hit New Providence, then we would see the destruction of several communities. Yeah.
Possibly, yeah. Well, let's see what happened with Matthew, right? So it could be a bit worse than that.
Because you're talking about 45 miles or so more
than what
in terms of wind speed.
Exactly. So it's a very strong storm. It's a very strong hurricane.
Interesting. Let us take a break here on our program. We are speaking with Mr. Jeffrey Simmons, who is the Senior Deputy Director of the Department of Meteorology. We'll come right back.